Trump just stunned the financial world by backing Ripple's XRP and RLUSD as they officially go live with major US banks. And let me tell you, when a sitting president is celebrating a crypto rollout, it's not a hype anymore. And that's when Ripple has already built a real-time, bank-ready alternative to everything slow and outdated in traditional finance. XRP moves the money, RLUSD keeps it stable, and the banks, they're already plugged in. But man, is this the beginning of a crypto-powered banking revolution, or just another headline with a deadline? Because on July 18, 2025, the United States crossed a financial threshold that had been years in the making. Donald Trump made it clear he supports the move to integrate Ripple's XRP and RLUSD into the US banking system. This isn't speculation, it's the confirmed position of the US president on the same day that Ripple's assets are going live with real banks. This support isn't vague praise. Trump directly urged lawmakers to pass the Genius Act without delay, calling for it to be sent to his desk ASAP. No delays, no add-ons. That law is the very reason XRP and RLUSD are being activated with bank-level backing today. Everything happening now is part of a deliberate regulatory setup that didn't exist before this week. Ripple's XRP and RLUSD are not just digital assets anymore, they're becoming active tools within US finance, and Trump's administration is signaling that this transition has his full support. RLUSD, Ripple's dollar-backed stablecoin, was built for this environment. It already meets the strict reserve and transparency requirements introduced in the Genius Act. And XRP, long tangled in lawsuits and ambiguity, is seeing its first week of real institutional movement in the US after being cleared for retail trading. The Genius Act passed the House of Representatives with a strong bipartisan vote of 308 to 122. It defines stablecoins as non-securities, mandates $1 to $1 backing, and sets the conditions for banks and trust companies to issue them. These terms match exactly how RLUSD is structured: full cash and treasury backing, live auditing, and no yield payments. Trump's eagerness to sign this act is part of a larger policy agenda to solidify the US as the global center for blockchain-based finance. This is not a tech experiment, this is financial infrastructure being rewritten in real time under new law. So be sure that the go-live status of Ripple's tools with US banks is not theoretical. It's tied to confirmed reports. Bank of America is using XRP via RippleNet's on-demand liquidity system to save money on cross-border payments. RLUSD's reserves are now being held by BNY Mellon, one of the most established custodial banks in the country. These developments are happening because the legal clarity delivered by the Genius Act allows it. Trump didn't build Ripple, but he's made it clear he wants its framework to thrive inside US banking. And now that the door is open, the next chapter will show exactly which banks are walking through it first. As of this week, the first wave of financial giants has begun integrating Ripple's digital assets into live infrastructure, starting with Bank of America. Confirmed through institutional filings and Ripple's public disclosures, Bank of America is now actively leveraging XRP for cross-border payments through RippleNet's on-demand liquidity system. Clients using this system are saving an estimated $120,000 annually in transaction fees alone. More importantly, they're unlocking $1.2 million in trapped capital, funds previously stuck in slow legacy settlement systems like SWIFT. This is no longer a test. This is real corporate money moving in real time. The second signal came from the upper floors of Wall Street itself. BNY Mellon, America's oldest bank and custodian of trillions in institutional assets, is now officially holding the reserves that back Ripple's stablecoin, RLUSD. That means RLUSD isn't just another crypto token floating in a digital void, it's dollar-pegged, fully backed, and physically anchored by a legacy bank that has handled U.S. government securities since before the Civil War. RLUSD reserves are held in cash and short-term treasuries, and they are independently attested. That kind of credibility doesn't just appear, it's earned through compliance, licensing, and transparency. Ripple positioned RLUSD for this moment. BNY Mellon gave it the vault. Thousands of miles away, Switzerland's Amina Bank has become the first international bank to list RLUSD for custody and trading. Regulated by Swiss financial authorities and designed to serve institutional crypto clients, Amina now enables RLUSD to flow through European payment rails alongside euros, francs, and digital assets. Unlike unregulated stablecoins sitting offshore, RLUSD is being onboarded into bank-grade custody services. Amina's move is not symbolic, it's functional. This makes RLUSD usable in treasury operations, international settlements, and eventually in tokenized capital markets where stable digital dollars are essential. But even more telling is how America's biggest banks are reacting behind the scenes. JP Morgan, Citigroup, and Wells Fargo aren't issuing press releases, but their activity speaks volumes. Industry analysts have confirmed that all three banks are running internal pilots tied to stablecoin settlement and tokenized asset flows. JP Morgan has already experimented with JPM Coin. Citi is building settlement rails for tokenized treasury bonds, and Wells Fargo is preparing infrastructure to handle blockchain-based real-time payments. What's changed is the regulatory environment. Ripple's success with RLUSD and XRP, now protected under the GENIUS Act's legal clarity, has triggered a defensive pivot inside these banks. And if those banks are building, the next phase isn't speculation, it's deployment. Because let me make it clear, the architecture Ripple built is not theoretical, it's functioning. XRP, Ripple's original asset, acts as a liquidity bridge, capable of moving large sums across borders in seconds at a cost of fractions of a cent. It doesn't rely on pre-funded accounts, it doesn't wait for intermediaries, it unlocks capital and removes geographic lag from the settlement process entirely. When banks use XRP, they're sidestepping the decades-old friction built into SWIFT and correspondent banking. This isn't a cheaper way to send money, it's an entirely new financial rail. RLUSD is Ripple's stablecoin, fully backed one-to-one by US dollars and treasuries, verified by licensed custodians like BNY Mellon. It's what traditional finance needed, a digital settlement instrument that doesn't fluctuate, doesn't yield, and doesn't trigger securities regulators. For banks, RLUSD is the missing piece, a secure, compliant replacement for dollars in motion. When paired with XRP's liquidity function, it forms a system that clears and settles value in seconds with no slippage, no float, and no after-hours cutoff. It's not just efficient, it's bank-grade, round-the-clock, and programmable. The combination is displacing legacy systems, and it's doing so under U.S. law. The company has formally filed for a U.S. national bank charter and a Federal Reserve master account. If granted, that would make Ripple not just a crypto company, but a regulated banking entity with direct access to the Fed's core systems. It would be the first time a crypto-native firm operated at that level of U.S. finance. And it would allow RLUSD reserves to be held directly with the central bank, making it as secure as any commercial bank dollar on the market. But none of it, is possible without the law that just cleared the runway. On July 17th, the U.S. House of Representatives passed the Genius Act by a vote of 308 to 122. This wasn't a symbolic measure, it's the first real federal law to define how stablecoins work in the United States. It requires issuers to hold $1 reserves, undergo monthly third-party audits, and avoid paying yield, ensuring stablecoins act as payments, not investment vehicles. These are the same principles Ripple has already applied to RLUSD, placing them in ideal position for legal compliance and rapid adoption. By stating clearly that payment stablecoins are not securities, the Genius Act eliminates years of confusion and legal risk. Ripple, Circle, and any bank that issues a stablecoin now have a definitive framework. They're not gambling on gray areas, they're building on statute. Trump called the Genius Act a reset button for America's financial future. The market didn't wait, it started moving the moment the votes were counted, and that legal green light is exactly what's pushing Ripple and the dollar into the next global phase. Because Ripple didn't just stumble into this moment, it built toward it with precision. RLUSD, Ripple's US dollar-backed stablecoin, was launched under the supervision of the New York Department of Financial Services in late 2024. From day one, it followed strict reserve policies, regulatory audits, and operational transparency. Less than a year later, it has grown to a market cap of $500 million, an early signal that institutions aren't just watching from the sidelines, they're participating. RLUSD isn't theoretical. It's on-chain, in motion, and already integrated into workflows across banks and custody providers. RLUSD functions natively on both Ethereum and the XRP ledger. This dual-chain deployment gives it the kind of interoperability most digital dollars lack. On Ethereum, it connects to existing DeFi platforms and infrastructure. On XRPL, it settles in seconds with near-zero cost, critical for banks prioritizing efficiency and scale. Ripple has been clear about its direction. Tokenized real-world assets are next. RLUSD is positioned as the primary settlement layer for tokenized asset markets. That includes digital real estate titles, tokenized US treasuries, and on-chain commercial paper, all areas where secure programmable dollars are essential. With the Genius Act now in place, those plans no longer rely on speculative compliance. They're built into federal law. RLUSD's foundation matches the statute almost line for line. That alignment didn't happen by luck. It's the result of Ripple preparing for regulated adoption years ahead of its competitors. In the days following the Genius Act's House passage, XRP surged 5.7%, reaching a new all-time high of $3.66. The price action wasn't retail speculation, it was institutional positioning. Traders and investment desks are pricing in real utility. XRP's use in cross-border transfers, RLUSD's entry into banking rails, and the expanding list of financial players going live. For the first time in years, there is regulatory clarity, product readiness, and political backing moving in sync, and it's reshaping the market. Expert voices aren't treating this as just another bill, they're calling it a foundational shift. Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse described the Genius Act as the Dodd-Frank of crypto, but smarter, referring to the post-2008 financial reforms that reshaped Wall Street. Industry leaders are echoing that view. Coinbase, Circle, and congressional leaders like Tom Emmer have praised the law as a global blueprint for stablecoin regulation. Analysts from multiple firms now refer to Ripple as the first functioning hybrid system, part fintech, part bank, fully legal, and scaling fast. Now, if you've followed the story this far, you're no less informed than the analysts breaking it down on live TV. So tell us, what's your take on Ripple's rise?